Are you really sure you want to have a spiritual awakening? Hey, this is Tracy with Tracy Talks. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, please share with your friends. I can be found on any platform where you listen to your podcast: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Thank you. Back when I started my spiritual journey, I was drawn to the belief that I wanted to have a spiritual awakening. And so I really started searching and looking for events and people and books and philosophies and ideas and anything that promoted a spiritual awakening. I thought that being spiritually awake was something that I needed to achieve, and that it was a state of mind that I didn't have. I am someone who believes that, or has believed, that there was more to me, that there was more to this process, this journey, that I didn't know everything that I needed to know. And I really started down this path of searching. But I was searching from a thought process that I was incomplete. I wasn't searching with this idea or belief that I was whole and just continuing to learn and grow. I had started this process from a place of being incomplete. And that by me learning and understanding that somehow through this process of spiritual awakening, I was actually going to become whole. I have been actively involved in deepening my spirituality probably since 2009, when I really wanted to learn about my chakras, my energy systems, meditation. I dove into manifestation and what that meant through The Secret. And so there's always been this constant evolution and exploration that has been present in my life for several years now. It has been something that has consumed a lot of my time. But again, it was always coming from this belief and understanding that I was not whole, and that through transcendence or through a spiritual awakening, I was going to have this moment where I had a knowing and I became whole. I know now that that is a flawed thought process. We are all whole right as we are right now. We are where we're supposed to be on this journey. We have the understanding that we are supposed to have at this moment in our life. And I believe that we are all at different levels. We are all learning at different paces. We are not going to arrive at the same level of understanding. That many of us are going to be at varying degrees of understanding for whatever that is. And now, if I was to have a conversation with myself when I started this journey, I wish I had had somebody that would have sat me down and walked me through this process. I wanted to have a spiritual awakening. I wanted to have a knowing. And now when I hear people say that, my thought automatically goes to, what does that mean for you? What do you consider a spiritual awakening? Do you want to experience ayahuasca? Do you want to use alternative methods of understanding how we interact with this time and reality? Do you want to practice drumming on a regular basis? Do you want to work on aligning your chakras? I mean, there are so many different ways that we can deepen into our spirituality. It really comes back to, what is the ultimate goal for you? What do you want to achieve? Are you looking for community? I know there have been a lot of people who I have met up with on this journey and were drawn to the idea of a spiritual awakening. In reality, they were looking for a community of like-minded people. Is that what you're drawn to? And then I've known people who were interested in developing a holistic practice and building a business. And it was through these communities that they networked, that they understood, that they learned, and there were skills that they developed along the way that were leading them to building their own business. Then there were people who really just like the idea of learning and understanding and living in this fluid world of spirituality. And what does that mean? These people have what we would call regular 9-to-5 jobs, who have regular lives, but yet still like to escape from the everyday world and dive into spirituality. When I look back to the original version of myself when I started this process, I could honestly say that I had a lot of these hopes and aspirations. I was drawn to the sense of community. I was drawn to the sense of understanding. The one area where I had difficulties was I could easily go to a weekend retreat or a weekend event, and I could play in the energy and be in the community. But there was a difficulty in bringing these practices back into my everyday life. I didn't have the support. I didn't have the daily structure. I didn't have the daily practices that I really needed to ground these ideas and beliefs into myself. I know I originally wanted to live a life where I had some type of daily routine, a daily meditation, some type of schedule that allowed for me to connect with my spirit, connect with guides, connect with understanding. And when there's the demands of the daily life, it can be challenging to maintain a strict routine. And I struggled with that. I struggled with how everything fit together. And so now when I hear somebody talk about, well, I would like to have a spiritual awakening and I would like to participate in that. And it's like, but what is missing in your life? What is the gap or the hole, or what is the void that you're feeling that you want to fill up? Because spiritual awakening is this big, huge umbrella and can mean everything. It can mean something different for everyone who has ever desired to experience that. So what does that mean for you? Does that mean that you can have a 10-minute daily devotion and your cup is full? Does that mean that you need to meditate 3 hours a day and that means your cup is full? There are varying degrees that each of us require to fill up our cups. And some of us can fill up our cups in practices that are not even really considered spiritual. When we do an act or we participate in an act with the intention of it being a ritual, of it being spiritual, it can also fill up our cup. I am certainly someone who requires variety. I really have a difficult time of being strict in a daily practice. I struggle with that. I get bored with that. I need variety. I need change. I need different ways to fill up my cup. A spiritual awakening is literally just a filling up of your cup. When we have a spiritual awakening, there isn't this moment where, angels descend down from the heavens and, we just understand and have a sense of knowing. A lot of times being spiritually awakened is simply just having your cup full. And you are the one that knows where you feel empty. Where are you feeling like you need love, support, understanding, community? And I don't necessarily believe all of us need to travel to these remote destinations with a shaman to have that awakening. Right after I was divorced and I was feeling very broken, isolated, confused, I was somewhere in the grieving process. And I had been working with an intuitive who was located in the Seattle area. And so she was sponsoring a sweat lodge. And it was really geared towards women and women healing the mother wound. Whatever that means or whatever that meant for each one of us. Because I think we all have varying degrees of wounds, and that the mother wound isn't always necessarily a wound from our mother, but it is also a wound that we acquire as being mothers. And so I signed up to participate in the sweat lodge. I didn't really want to explore the process. I didn't really want to explore the whole ceremony because I didn't want to create any fear of doubt. I didn't want to create any fear. I just wanted to show up and participate in the ceremony and the event from a completely open place, that I wanted to be open to the possibility of whatever was going to happen. And so I flew into Seattle, and she was a lovely person, and so I stayed with her. I'd never been up to the area. The retreat area was actually on Bainbridge Island, which is a small little island off of the Seattle area. And so we had to travel by ferry to get there. We couldn't just leave when it was over because the ferry had timed schedules and there was only so many ferries a day, and after a certain point the ferry stopped. The night before, we had found items for an offering. It was basically a setting of intention of what we had hoped to gain, understanding, awareness of what we were intending to happen. And all in all, it was a small group of women, and most of them she had either worked with or had known locally. A couple of the women had flown in, and we were all from varying ages, which I found interesting because I think one of the youngest was probably 18 or 19. One of the ladies who was facilitating the event was in her 70s. So we had women almost of every generation. I happened to be the only woman in the group that had children. None of the other women had bore any children of their own. This sweat lodge was 4 intense rounds, about an hour each. There was some strict rules that we needed to follow once we went into the tent. Once you went in, you knew that you weren't going to come out until the round was over. And so basically, we actually constructed the tent, and that was part of the ceremony where we threw the canvas and we threw everything over to create the tent. The rocks during this process were being heated on a fire. And so once the rocks are heated, they are placed into a pit in the center of the tent. And so the woman that was leading the group, during this process, she was pouring water onto the heated rocks to create the heat within the tent. And so the 4 rounds represented much like the 4 seasons. You have a spring where you plant the seeds of intention. You have the summer where your crops are growing, and you have the fall where you have the harvest, and then you have winter, which is the death round. And so there was a definite journey through these processes. The process was intense. The heat was intense. So much of our life is devoted to our connection with ourselves, our connection with people, the connections that we have in life. And we are encouraged from the beginning of our birth to connect with people and create that connection and maintain that it is through connection that we grow and evolve. The one thing that I had reinforced during the sweat lodge was we are actually all on this journey alone. We are all experiencing life alone. That we don't have control over our loved ones. We don't have control over really their success and their life and what happens. We want so badly to feel like we are the ones who are controlling everything. But the message that came through loud and clear on this was, I actually don't have control over my loved ones. They're actually making their own decisions. They have been making their decisions from a very early age. While many of us believe that we are actually creating the opportunities for people, that we are helping grow and mold them into the people that they are, but in reality, every individual is making their own decisions and will create their own life in spite of what we actually do. Do I feel that this experience provided me with a spiritual awakening? Looking back, I wouldn't say that now. I will say I went into the event hoping for a spiritual awakening, that I was hoping for the angels to descend and for me to, in one moment, have a complete knowing. But now, while it was an event that provided me with more self-awareness, more understanding, it allowed me to connect with like-minded people. It wasn't the end-all be-all. And that's because I was operating from the belief that I was incomplete. I was operating from the belief that someone else, something else, or some experience was going to complete me. And that is simply untrue. The moment that I signed up for that retreat, I was complete. I didn't have any holes to fill. I wasn't missing understanding. I wasn't missing anything. And I think that is a trap that the spiritual community promotes. The spiritual community often promotes that you're incomplete as you are right now. And it's only through this program, this retreat, this whatever, that once you sign up for this, then you can become complete. That is simply untrue. And so when someone says, well, I want to have a spiritual awakening, my next question is, what does that mean for you? There aren't any answers out there. We have everything that we need right here in this moment. If you want to have a fun time and you want to meet up with like-minded individuals, by all means sign up. People who are devoted to a daily ritual can achieve enlightenment just as easily as someone who travels around the world on a retreat. Both acts can produce the desired results. What are you looking for in your life? How can you start today? What can you do right now in this place to fill up your cup and become whole? That is a spiritual awakening. Thank you for listening to this podcast of Tracy Talks. Please like and share with others who would enjoy listening to this podcast. And until next time, we meet again.